Hey guys, this is Mel, and I am back to talk about the 100 episode 712 titled The Stranger, which premiered Wednesday, August 19th, 2020 on the CW. I'm recording roughly 2.5 hours after the episode is aired, so huge spoiler alert. If you haven't seen the episode already, please go do so first, and then come back and see what I have to say about the episode. My other video reminders are up on screen, so take a moment to remind yourselves of those. Quick YouTube shoutouts to Mr. Legendary AO. Thank you so much for your comment, and also for sharing this theory that you came across, because now this whole episode I couldn't stop thinking about what if Bellamy was tricked into doing his own little simulation thing that Octavia and the others had to do, where they thought they originally killed Hope and the test that Hope failed at. But that's a possibility too. I'm loving the theory. Whoever originated that, kudos to you. But Mr. Legendary AO, thank you for bringing that to my attention. Also, shout out to Elvis Abrahimovic. Loving your predictions. As always, you seem to be on the right track from my understanding. So can't wait to hear what you have to say next, because as you guys know, we are in the final countdown. This would mark the first of 5 for the last episodes. I believe this is either episode 95 or 96. I'd have to double check. But yeah, we're getting very close and things are really picking up. So I'm not going to do a timer today, but I'm going to try to keep things very, very simple, hopefully. But let's start with what happened in this episode. So timeline-wise, it takes place shortly after the events of episode 711. So that's in regards to Bardo, because at the end of 711, Bellamy just came back from the Etheria. He's cleaned himself up, so I'm assuming it's short for Bardo. It's shortly after his return. For Sanctum, I think it's shortly after the events of what happened in 710 for them. Nope. Yeah, 710, because they weren't featured in 711. So 710, but I'm not sure if it's the next day for them or if it's just a continuation of that same day, and it's just business as usual with Shahida taking control again. So there's that. But the episode reminder, I'm pretty much going to say that you can pretty much find unrecognizable actions from familiar faces. You can kind of tie in the whole stranger title, the whole title of The Stranger, which I will talk about later on as well. So that's something. Episode objective is pretty much very, very vague to the fact that you're pretty much trying to save everybody in this episode, whether you're on Bardo, whether you're on Sanctum, depending on whose side you're on. You're trying to save people, and if you're on the opposing side, you're pretty much trying to get what you want, essentially. So with that said, though, episode breakdowns, we are back to 2 planets once again. We have Bardo and we have Sanctum. So with Bardo, we see Bellamy making a deal with Bill to try to reconstruct the flame so that he could spare his friends. But in doing so, that means he has to send Raven and Clarke into memory capture, because they were the ones who last saw the flame, and they're both refusing to give up its location. In the end, though, Clarke makes the deal with Bill that instead of telling him where the flame is, she will show them, but she wants to secure the safety of her friends first. She only makes this deal because Bill is at his wit's end, and he decides to send her friends to penance one by one to live out their execution sentence. So that's why she makes the deal. In the end of it, though, instead of sending them to Sanctum to safety, Bill sends all of Clarke's friends to a different planet as leverage. He doesn't express which one. There's 5 other options that they can use. And Clarke is only left with Gabriel and Raven, both who know how the anomaly works, or at least how to use the coding system of it. And then Bellamy, just because he's also part of the Bill's team kind of a thing. So there's that. And when we go to Sanctum, though, we do see Shahida is trying to round up everybody in Sanctum and forcing them to either kneel to him or they die. We see him hunting down those who have not chosen a side, so the rebels, I guess, and they're all hidden by Murphy and Amori. So these are pretty much the people who used to be called the Faithful that he tried to originally execute when he originally revealed himself to be Shahida. But his mindset is that he kills them now so they don't become vengeful and try to retaliate later in the future. So that's his mindset there. But yeah, I'll mention that later. But the last moments of the episode show Clarke returning to Sanctum in Shahida's throne room, and we see Murphy being his prisoner playing chess It's also assumed that Bellamy, Raven, and Gabriel are also part of the group that returned with Clarke to Sanctum, but Clarke is the only one that's unmasked out of those people. Again, assuming Bill is also one of them, but there's a few disciple soldiers as well too. So that is the ending there, with Clarke asking what the hell has happened, kind of a thing. Now, moving on to characters though, with Bellamy, we do find out what his motivation is to becoming a disciple, and this true epiphany moment that he had in his vision quest on Ethereal. And essentially he's trying to do what he can to bring the last war, to end all wars, because he wants to bring peace for his people. That's essentially where he's going for. And for him, he's playing off the fact that he truly, after this vision quest, he truly believes in this lifestyle, even though he's very new to it. So he's still struggling with trying to not be as emotionally invested, struggling with his loyalty between Bill and the disciples and Clarke and the others. You do see it in how he interacts with Clarke and the others. He's very stilted with his what would have been emotional responses. But then with Bill, you do see the struggle. So I will bring up that later on. With Nelson, though, we do see him be executed by Shaheda when he refuses to kneel to him. He is the last of the children of Gabriel to be executed, because when Nelson first refuses, pretty much Shaheda shoots all the surrounding children of Gabriel dead, and then he gives Nelson a second chance to make a decision, and he refuses, so Shaheda shoots him dead. And the only lone survivor of that is Luca, which is the kid that connected with Maddie in a previous episode. So Indra manages to sneak him out, but he's very traumatized over the fact that he just survived this huge slaughter. So that's something there. And now, because Luca's a survivor, he has the potential of wanting revenge against Shaheda later on. So there's that. Now, moving on to tidbits very quickly. There was no recap in this episode, which I didn't know if I maybe missed it in the beginning or if that was actually the case. But it just jumps right into, I think, one of the sneak peek clips that they did for, that they released before the episode. So there's that. We do see Shaheda recognizing the anomaly symbols from within the flame when he sees one of Maddie's drawings of the throne room with the anomaly orb. So there's that. We do see Shaheda actually getting a throne made of skulls, which is very morbid. So there is that. Also, we do find out from Bill, which is revealed in another scene that he has with Bellamy that was released before the episode aired, was that he acknowledges the fact that he's been following this new path, the shepherd way, I guess I will call it, for centuries, and that he is awakened every 20 years by a new disciple, Anders being the exception since he's woken him up twice. The original time, and the second time when he was told that the key was had arrived. And then also Bill reveals that he believes that his daughter Callie had killed Reese, and he shows no emotion about this. He pretty much mentions it as if it's like just some commonality. You say like, oh, the weather's great today. He mentioned it kind of like that. And even though stating that like the last time he saw his son was when he went off to go find his daughter to retrieve the flame. And then he just says, I think she killed him, or kind of thing. And it's just like blasé type of thing. And it was Bellamy who showed more emotion in that conversation by saying, well, if we find the flame, you can finally get the answers about whether that was true or not, kind of a thing. So we get a little bit more about Bill in that scene in itself. So there's that. Now, ship status. There's a bunch of ship stuff that goes down, mainly because Bellamy interacts with a lot of characters one-on-one without the eyes of the disciples looming in and influencing that. So with Bellamy and Clarke, we do have the whole recognizable best friend argument from Clarke, while Bellamy's claiming that he's still the same person that she could trust, begging her to believe in him, and yet she refuses because even though she wants to believe in Bellamy, she will not believe in Bill, and she will not help him start this last war. Understandably so. And then you got Bellamy and Octavia. I think you had more of I think it was more of the conflict with the fact that Octavia was siding with Clarke in that because she had to be taken to memory capture, but you could definitely see the divide in the two siblings. And then you also have the divide between Bellamy and Echo as lovers, because she even asks him if this new belief in his is more important. than their friends, if it's more important than them as a couple. And he says yes. And that's where he explains that he wants to get peace for all of them. He's trying to do this to save them all. And it was just a bit of betrayal there for her. When she asks, like, who are you? And he says, like, I'm the man that you love. And then she questions, well, the man that I love would not be okay with getting Raven tortured in memory capture, kind of a thing. So we do see tension there. With Bellamy and Raven, we got the whole betrayed family aspect from Raven. He does send her to memory capture, which she's not okay with. So that's something there. With Murphy and Emori on Sanctum, we do see them trying to do everything they can to be the heroes while also trying to make the most of their situation, which gets interrupted many times. They do set it up a few times in this episode where you don't know if either one of them would survive the events of the episode's stakes, if it were. So there's that. And then we do see a bit of a clashing moment between Murphy and Nikki, the Allegis prisoner leader. Pretty much, she tries to find him hiding away all the prisoners. They manage to get a step ahead of her. And while she's restrained, Murphy brings up Hatch as a way to, like, don't make me, kind of saying, like, don't do anything you're going to regret, because I don't want to torture you, I don't want to threaten you, and then make Hatch's sacrifice all for nothing because he did it in order to save Nikki. And she pretty much quiets down from there, as if the understanding is, like, I'm not going to jeopardize this, kind of a thing. So that is something there. But let's move on to the most shocking moment of the episode. I think for me is the fact that, I don't know why, but I think it's the fact that Clarke's friends, I don't know what else to call them, the co of Clarke and Co, they aren't on Sanctum, yet they're elsewhere. I mean, it makes sense logically why Bill would do that, just to ensure that, because there's nothing stopping Clarke from just having all of them back at Sanctum. There's nothing stopping her from sending them to the wrong place to get the flame. But now that he has her friends on a different planet, now she really has to hold up her end of the deal. So that was a shock there. I think also the shock was that at the very end, we actually got Clarke back on Sanctum in the throne room of all places. So I think that was something there as well. But yeah. But moving on to parallels. This episode actually had a lot of parallels and callbacks to the previous seasons. And I don't know if you could say, like, either it was very heavy and, like, too much, or if it was just the absolute best time for all these to be brought up because of where our characters were in the story. So specifically with Jordan and Hope, this is also the first time they're ever sharing a scene together, and they're stuck in a cell, and she's still mourning the loss of her mom, who sacrificed herself to make sure that bioweapon didn't get released into the Bardo air system at the end of 10. So naturally so. But I didn't realize how very similar Jordan and Hope's childhoods are, because they were both grew up in very isolated locations. Jordan on the Allegis ship with just Monty and Harper, his parents. And then Hope, she only grew up on Skyrim with her mom and Octavia. And then later on, it was just with Dev. And then to grow up and to lose all these people and have this change of hope. And he also says the fact that we grew up with these stories of our main characters since Earth, the Earth days, and yet they are not our friends. They've just been the heroes to our stories, kind of a thing. So they're essentially the next generation type of, while still being part of the, I don't know if that makes sense. But that was a huge one there, and they just have a really good moment of, like, her need to feel that solidarity of, like, someone who could understand her, and I thought that was pretty good there. Another thing was Bellamy was just mentioning to Clarke and Octavia all the craziness that they've dealt with over the years, because Clarke even said that their last war just seems crazy, and then Bellamy brings up the fact that Ali and the City of Light was crazy, the Primes and their body snatching was crazy, so how is having the last war to save humanity, how is that any different, kind of a thing? So they kind of bring up like that in their argument. Another parallel, and I don't know if anyone else would agree with me, but the Shahida's ultimatum with everybody of kneel or die. Pretty standard. But also it had me thinking about Blood Reina, when Octavia would say in the early days of the bunker, how she said, you are either you are one crew or you are enemy of one crew. Choose. Those who who opposed her ended up getting the wrong end of the sword, kind of a thing. So it kind of did call back in how very similar the two leaderships are. As much as I don't want to think of Blood Reina as being as evil as Shaheda, but she did have her dark days. So the ultimatums definitely, I would consider to be a parallel. Another parallel was Maddie and Luca, the children of Gabriel survivor. And it was only until Maddie was opening up about her own experiences, surviving after the death wave, being the sole survivor of her people, living alone until Clarke found her and stuff, when she was trying to get Luca to understand that she could relate to the trauma he's currently dealing with right now. I thought that was very mature of her. I thought it was a great moment to express not only to Luca, but also to those two other kids, which I believe they were part of the faithful. So just, it seemed like those four could probably become a solid unit later on. Maybe if we ever do get a flash forward moment, maybe those four are the next leaders of our group of people. Maybe, I don't know. There's potential there, but I really like that the way Maddie was able to bring that commonality, I guess, between them, or bring the similarities up, so he didn't feel so alone in that moment. And it did get him to accept the food in a way, because he needed to eat too. So that's something there. Poor kid, though. I mean, really, wow. And then also another parallel is just with Clarke and Octavia, being the fact that Octavia brings it up with Clarke when they're stuck in a cell together, saying, like, I finally understand you now. And she makes a comparison of the fact that you have Maddie, I had Hope. And so for 10 years and 5 years, they both had to be these mother figures. And they understood how, well, Octavia now understands how Clarke's instinct to do whatever she can to make sure Maddie is safe, because now Octavia has that for Hope. But then Octavia is actually struggling with the fact that for her, it's only been a few days since she saw that 10-year-old girl, and now Hope is grown to be, I think it was 25, I said she was, last time I checked with the timeline. And yet she is just as messed up as all the rest of them, and then she's on the verge of breaking, and then Bellamy walks in. So that's another parallel right there. But let's move on to top 3 favorite moments. I think the first one would have to be Bellamy. Again, the fact that he got as much screen time as he did, huge plus after having him gone for so long, even though he's on the wrong side of the spectrum at the moment. But I did like in the episode, we do see him struggling. They even made point of it of Bill calling on Bellamy's moments of shame when he's trying to test Bill to see if he does follow his ways like every other disciple, but then Bill calling him out saying, it's okay, don't be ashamed, you're still new to this. So I thought it was very interesting that with Bill, you do see Bellamy struggling to withhold the emotional part of him, and Bill recognizes that. So that was something there. But then another thing was that every time Bellamy was with all the people who he would consider as family, and he was trying to protect, any scene he had with them, though, you could see that there is this stiltedness to it. Like he was holding back a lot, because a lot of the conversations that he was having in this episode, I felt like if it was Bellamy before Ethereal, they would have been a lot more emotional, a lot more explosive in his responses, and you definitely see a lot more of a reaction from him. But because he's now living the Bardo way of emotions being a weakness, and you have to think of the good of everybody as opposed to the good of the one, he's definitely trying to hold in that selfish aspect of the emotions. And you can see him trying to restrain himself. You see him try to be logical, kind of mimicking like what you would see like an android maybe trying to compute with things a little bit. So it was interesting to see that, but also just to have Bellamy explain why he's following the ways of the shepherd, and why he's betraying his love for Echo, why he's betraying his friendship for Clarke, and how he ultimately is still being Bellamy and trying to do what's best to prevent a war and try to save the people he loves from dying. Even though by doing that, he's betraying the people that he loves, kind of a thing. So he's really stuck in a rock and a hard place, kind of a thing, if I did the phrasing correct there. So that is something there. Another favorite I did have, though, was everyone was being proud of Murphy and acknowledging that. We got that from Indra, we got that from Imori, and then we also just had it came to a point where, like, I love that Murphy was getting recognition. He was teasing off of it, and he was slowly accepting. It's like, this feels good kind of a thing. But it just had me very worried that this was an episode that he would die in, because usually with the 100, its track record is when a character finds redemption, they are quickly killed off afterwards. So when Murphy was getting praised for being a hero and thinking outside of himself and doing something for the sake of helping another person, he was starting to get in the groove of that and standing up for the little people, as it were, who couldn't stand up for themselves. It was like great progress for Murphy, but then a part of me was like, please don't kill him. Please don't kill him. If this is, don't make this be the moment he redeems himself and then he dies. I would not be able to handle that. So just because he has grown a lot. And I love that you do see him shifting back and forth between the Murphy we know and love at the very beginning, where he is the cockroach that never dies. But then there's also him just stepping up and being that role. And then also just a side bonus that was a favorite was just his smile when Clarke came through the door and he saw that his friends were back and ready to help them fix things. It was just like, and was just everything for me, because I'm still thinking about that fan fiction where Clarke and Murphy are paired up, even though it's a Bellamy Clarke story type of thing. So it's just like, also, I'm just a huge fan of Clarke and Murphy and friendships. Like, that's just one of my things. So that's something there. And another favorite I really like was just all the different parallels we got between the comforting sets. So with Maddie and Luca, Jordan and Hope, and Octavia and Clarke, it was very interesting to see how each one of them tried to emphasize a specific parallel between the two of them, like really hitting the nail on the head about how they were similar and how they could relate, kind of trying to unify each other and to stand on the same page kind of a thing, which I really appreciated. Plus, it's also, as the final season, that is just a huge way to bring comebacks and callbacks and show that you are paying attention to the histories of your characters. So that was something that I appreciated. Now, moving on to top 3 peeved moments. The fact that Bellamy still believes in Bill. I mean, a part of me kind of hoped that it was still just an undercover Trojan horse thing. He was maybe just playing the long game a bit with Bill. But then to see, like, he's actually, I mean, it's great to see that he is still struggling with the new mindset. But then the fact that he's even struggling to begin with because he's actually conforming to the Bardo way has me peeved, because now Bellamy's on the opposite side of where Clarke and the others are in regards to this issue of the last war. So that is something there. And then another peeve was the fact that Bellamy was part of Clarke's MCAP memory capture session, and yet he didn't see anything. We didn't see him see flashes of any of her memories. I know a lot of people were saying that they hoped that he would see snippets of when she would radio call him during the 5 years, or during the 6 years that he was up in space and she was alone on Earth with Maddie. I mean, after I heard people saying that, I kind of wished for that too. Plus, I also kind of hoped in a way that if he was in the room during the memory capture, I kind of hoped that maybe once Bill left the room and it was just Bellamy and Clarke, then maybe she would allow something to show through to maybe get him to rethink his new stance in the Bardo way of life, as you would. But the fact that nothing came of it except for the 2 lines they shared with each other, that is kind of where the peeve stems from. So that is something there. But let's move on to random questions very quickly. The first one: could Clarke's friends be on the planet that Gaia is still trapped on? Again, we have not seen Gaia since she got knocked out by a disciple and pushed through the breach, and then the orb just got turned offline. I'm wondering if it's still one of the planets that we haven't been to, one of the planets we have already been to, or maybe if it's Earth. Some people are saying that if they can travel back to Earth, then maybe that's an option there. Maybe it's been many more years maybe it's been more than 125 years that it took for our characters to get from Earth to Sanctum. Maybe it's been a lot more of that time has passed on Earth, and maybe it's actually livable again. Like, maybe that's a possibility. That'd be pretty cool too if the series, let me just put out there now, the series just ends with them all back on Earth and starting anew after it's taken maybe centuries to replenish itself, maybe. I don't know. Another question, did anyone else think that the last war would be on Sanctum between Bill and Shaheda after Clarke made that deal to take Bill to the flame? I mean, initially when she said, like, I won't tell you, but I'll show you where the flame is, I kept immediately thinking, like, Clarke is just bringing Bill and his disciples into a powder keg with Shaheda trying to pretty much kill anyone who rebels against him and try to take over Sanctum. And that is just going to be, like, and then if he goes against Bill, that's going to be a huge ego face-off right there. So I'm, like, wondering, is this the final battle? And it's not actually a test that Jordan thought it was, or it's some transcendence thing that Bill has been preaching all these years. So that was one thought there. Another one is, does anyone else hope for a showdown between Octavia and Shaheda, or has Octavia put her Blood Reina past behind her? I mean, on the one hand, visually it'd be pretty cool just to see the two warriors going against each other, hoping that Shaheda loses after the end of it. But then I would understand character-wise if that's not something Octavia wants to go back to, because she did spend 10 years not being a warrior with raising hope and stuff. So I'm wondering, but then she did train with the disciples. So I guess that's like a toss-up in the air. I'm not particularly sure. So that's something there. Also, last question I just thought of. Are we going to see the revisiting of Jordan's theory about how the disciples' translation of the anomaly symbols are incorrectly done, and it's not the last war they're moving towards, but actually a test for humanity? So that's a question there. And I just thought of another one too, with Octavia telling Bellamy that she poses the question of what happens if we lose this last war, and she brings up the possibility of them all being crystallized like the original Bardoians, and what happened to Dioza and Anders. I'm wondering if that's actually the end scenario for them. Like, is that legit what's going to happen if they do lose this last war, and that's the risk that they're fighting against? Or is this only a speculation for them, thinking like this is what happened with the original Bardoians and they lost, and this is what happened to their people? So if they try to redo that for themselves, and they're at the risk of doing the same thing. So that's a question there in itself. So otherwise, guys, that is it for questions. Let's move on to predictions. This will be very short because the promo for 7/13 reveals that the episode is not airing until September 9th. So that is, what is that? That's 2 weeks of a hiatus break. I honestly didn't think we'd be getting a break with these final episodes airing. But I guess after that, they have 4 straight weeks to go to the final episode, which is just sad to begin with. But anyways, the promo does reveal that we're on Sanctum, and it looks like the red moon is rising once again, where it has that psychedelic effect on people. We see killer bugs on the loose. We see the people trapping themselves in the reactor core to not be killed by Shaheda. They are preparing for a breach into that reactor core from outside forces. It looks like Bill just wants to get off this godforsaken planet because maybe the psychosis messes with the disciples, and that's where maybe that's how we're going to get Bellamy back. Oh God, I hope so. I need Bellamy to get back in his right frame of mind and know that what Bill's saying is a lie, and it's not transcendence, it's actually him. Why would you lead humanity into the last war? Like, why would you lead them into a war to begin with? Like, you'd want to avoid it, right? So, and you don't need a war in order to end all wars. Like, that's redundant. So there is that. Now, because the episode is airing in 2 weeks, over 2 weeks technically, there is, at the time of this recording, there is no synopsis for 7/13 out there for me to find. If it does show up when I'm editing this video, then it will be on screen right now. Pause the video if you want to fully read it. If it's not on screen, then you know it hasn't been posted by the time of this editing of the video. Which usually I get this posted to you guys in the middle, like midday Thursday. But because I should really be working on an assignment right now that it's due 9 a.m. Thursday morning, I'm going to have to spend my night doing the assignment as opposed to editing the video and allowing it to render while I sleep. So you might get a little delay on the video, this video. Or you did get a delay on this video since you are watching it right now. So yeah, it's a little weird when I dress things like that, because like I'm talking as if right now as I'm recording it, but then you guys see it later when I've actually finished editing it. And like, anyways, you get what I'm saying. Anyways, that is pretty much it. I've talked so much already. My throat is going raw. But what did you guys think of this episode? What did you guys like about it? What do you think will happen next? Let me know in the comments down below. Love to hear your own thoughts, theories, and opinions about all that good stuff. Also, here's a question for you. What did you think the title "The Stranger" was referring to? I ultimately think it meant Bellamy initially, just because to everybody else around him, he was literally a stranger to them now with this new belief system. So there's that. But I want to know what you guys thought about the title in itself, or maybe it was about it was referring to some other stranger that maybe I didn't pick up on. So that's something there. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to my channel, check my other videos if you haven't done so already. If you want, check my Tumblr page. Link for that is down below. Anything I post online is connected to WordPress. It's also, yeah. Did I just mixed it? Yeah. Tumblr, WordPress, links down below. Anything I post online is connected to WordPress. For Tumblr, I reblog promos, web clips, quotes, GIFs, all that stuff. I will do that probably within the 2-week hiatus. Really depends on the homework workload right now. But be on the lookout for that. Try to keep things organized. Sorry, my brain's still fried right now. I'm like on writer's block too, and then recording this and trying to keep things straight. But anyways, that is pretty much it. Yeah, okay. So guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for your patience. If you made it this far, thank you so much once again. It still amazes me how some people just will be willing to listen to me rant and read. Oh, I do have a last question though for you guys. Since it is going to be a 2-week hiatus, here's something to ponder on. Please let me know in the comments down below what you think about this. But I have been debating whether or not for the series finale, if I should bring in someone else to kind of talk about the series or about the finale in general, or maybe a series as a whole. Maybe do a one-on-one with them and just talk about it, or maybe do 2 people depending on who I really get to talk to. There won't be anybody big, but there's a few people in my class who actually are fans of the show and maybe might be open to doing something like this with me. I have no idea, but I'm posing it out as the question now, if that's something you guys be interested in, if you got 2 different perspectives in my videos, or if you just want me to stick to my own format, or maybe just do an extra video after the series has ended where I bring other perspectives to kind of talk about the show and what our thoughts were about the whole journey about it. But please let me know in the comments down below what you think about the idea. It'll definitely help me plan and who I should approach when it comes to that. But yeah, otherwise guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for your patience. Once again, I'm already forgetting what I said. But again, guys, truly appreciate the support. I hope you guys come back in 2 weeks to see what they say about the next episode. But until then, guys, this is Mel. Wish you a great day, great week wherever you are. And because it's a pandemic, please be safe and please be mindful and please be kind. So take care, guys. Bye.